Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox recording here with 5 home studio recording mistakes that are hurting your guitar tone. Now, if you've been working within the hard rock or metal genres for any length of time, I'm sure you know by now just how much of a pain in the ass heavy guitar tone can be. It's often either too bright, too dark, too fizzy, too muddy, not clear, too bitey, the list goes on. And the truth is, a lot of these issues stem from just improper techniques and workflows. So within this video, I want to cover the 5 common mistakes that people often make when dealing with heavy guitars within their home recordings. Now, I've been guilty of making all 5 of these mistakes many times, so I want you to learn from my mistakes so you can get right to making killer recordings within your studio. So let's start with mistake number 1. Not using a guitar that's been properly set up and intonated. I don't care if you're using a high-end solar guitar, either a brand new Axe FX or Kemper. If your guitar hasn't been intonated and you're not using fresh strings, you're not gonna dial in a killer guitar tone. Now, I cannot even begin to express the amount of times that people have come into the studio to track with me with super high-end guitars that have never been set up and with strings that are 2 years old. Rusty strings, poor intonation, all of these things really will hurt your guitar sound. I don't care who you are or what amp you're playing through. I'd rather have a cheapo guitar that's been properly set up than have a high-end guitar that's never been set up ever. You will get better results that way. So remember, always have your guitar properly set up and at the very least, be using new strings. And this leads me to mistake number 2, not picking aggressively. Now within the heavy music genres, we all want super aggressive, tight sounding guitar tones. But the truth is that if you're not digging in and you're not playing aggressively, you're not gonna have an aggressive guitar tone. Quick story here, one of the first bands I ever recorded were really into the band Killswitch Engage. And they were obsessed with achieving this Killswitch Engage guitar tone, but the guitar player just picked like a bitch. And again, if you're not picking aggressively and not playing with attitude, you're not gonna end up with an angry, aggressive guitar tone. It doesn't matter what guitar or what rig you're playing through. So remember, if you want that super tight, chunky, aggressive tone, play that way. I know it might seem really overly simplistic and obvious, but believe me, people sometimes don't think about it. Okay, and this leads me to recording mistake number 3, and this is a big one. Not recording DIs with your heavy guitar tracks. Now, there's 2 reasons why this is important. Reason number 1 is that if you decide that your guitar tone is not working within your production down the road, if you don't record DIs, you can't change the tone. Now, I am a fan of committing and getting the tone right on the source, but there are situations where sometimes you do want to change the tone later. Again, heavy guitar tone can be deceiving, especially if you're tracking a lot of songs at once. By tracking DIs, you have a safety net that you can fall back on if you ever decide that you want to switch out your guitar tone. The other reason why tracking DIs is important is for editing. Now, if you ever look at amp tracks within a DAW, they look like a solid blob. By tracking a DI, even if you don't ever plan on reamping, it will help you when it comes time to editing because the transients are much more clear and easy to work with. This is why most modern metal producers track DIs with their guitars, even if they're not a fan of reamping. It makes editing a million times easier and will help you produce better results much quicker. So remember, track DIs. Now, on the topic of editing, this leads me to mistake number 4, not editing your guitar tracks. Now, I don't want to sound like a broken record. I know I've done videos on this topic in the past, but the truth is that if you're after that modern, polished metal guitar tone, most modern metal records have been edited to death. Now, I know the cool thing on the internet is to say that editing is cheating and it's ruining music, blah, 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 blah. But the truth is that your favorite modern metal records have probably been edited to death in the post-production phase. And remember, the tightness of the overall guitar performance really does shape the perceived guitar tone of the production. People often hear these amazing modern metal productions and think there's some magic trickery happening with the guitar or the guitar rig or some crazy miking technique, but the truth is that a lot of it comes down to how tight the performances are. And those tight performances have been heavily doctored by editing. I'm just shooting it straight with you. This is reality. So again, if you're after that type of tone, edit your guitar tracks. And this brings me to big mistake number 5, not using a decent impulse response or guitar cab. Now, a lot of times we all obsess about the head that we're using, what fancy pants plugin we're using, but the truth is that if you're not using a decent sounding guitar cab and or impulse response, your guitar tone will not sound right. I'd go as far as to say that the cab that you're using is just as important or more important than the head that you're using. And the same goes for the impulse response. You could be using the cheapest amp sim under the sun. If you pair it with a decent impulse response, you're gonna have a pretty decent guitar tone. Now, if you don't have a decent impulse response to work with, you could download my impulse response for absolutely free. There's a link below in the video's description. It's an impulse response taken from my Mesa Boogie cabinet out of my studio, where I mic'd up the V30 with a single SM57 for some solid, heavy guitar tone. Again, you can download it for absolutely free. There's a link below within the video's description. So even though it's common knowledge now that your impulse response and or cabinet are super important to your guitar tone, people often overlook it. And do not make this mistake. You'll be chasing your tail when it comes to dialing in your guitar tone. So hopefully you've learned something from this video and will avoid making any of these 5 mistakes. Again, these are mistakes that I've made myself. I've wasted a lot of time and I don't want that to be the case for you. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And do not forget to click the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload one of my weekly videos on all things metal and rock production. You can both like and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Links are in the description below. And again, download my impulse response of my favorite Mesa Boogie cap out of my studio for absolutely free. There's a link below, right within this video's description. Till next time, happy recording.